Let's dive into your questions on the topic. So try to keep it gut related, if you will. Somebody asked me earlier, it was one of the first questions that came in, I'll go ahead and answer it, the question was on yeast. What do you do about kind of pervasive or persistent yeast overgrowth in the GI tract, especially if it's drug resistant? The best thing to do is have your doctor test you, first of all, for it, to test to see what kind of yeast you have. And some of the tests, it's called a culture sensitivity, where they can culture out yeast growing inside of you. But then furthermore, they can actually see what would best kill that yeast so that you can get a higher degree of specificity if you're struggling with a drug resistant strain of yeast. That would be what I would encourage you to ask your doctor to do. Let's see here. So Angeline says, hi, Dr. Osborne, living on a budget. If you have to choose one supplement for chronic leaky gut, what would it be? I have something called LGS support. LGS stands for leaky gut support. So LGS support, we can put that link up for you. And it's a multi-purpose formula with a number of different ingredients that'll help support your situation. But that's what I'd recommend if you're really on a limited budget. Let's see. Oh, Lavender says, hi, I just went gluten-free. It's only day 4. Having some reactions to substitutes. Any advice? Depends on what substitutes you're eating, Lavender. If you're eating the grain-based substitutes like the corn and the rice products, then that's probably the worst way to go gluten-free. The best way to go gluten-free, get you a copy of No Grain, No Pain, and follow the phase 1 and phase 2 diets in the book. To avoid any type of potential cross-reactivity or other reactions that might make your experience not effective. Let's see. I like that. So Lavender also says, I'm out of bed after only 4 days of being gluten-free. So you may be doing it even not 100% right, and you're still out of bed after only 4 days. That's fantastic. Hopefully those of you who are listening who maybe haven't changed your diet will take that and run with it. Kathleen wants to know if canker sores and oral lichen planus are related. They're not related in terms of being the same entity, but I've seen cases where people had both and gluten-free diet actually resolved them both. So related in terms of, can a gluten-free diet potentially resolve both of those issues? I've seen that happen, but again, they're not the same entity. They're not the same problem. Doc, is spelt flour okay from J.S. Hansen? No, I don't recommend spelt flour at all. Let's see here. I get dry mouth from potatoes, yucca, and so many gluten-free whole food substitutes. Is it one of the most? It's one of the most uncomfortable symptoms. Hoping it doesn't derail my healing. Yeah. So there's 3 rules, Lavender, to follow when you're going gluten-free initially, and the first one is obviously be 100% grain-free. The second one, though, is to listen to your body. Your body's going to talk to you as well, and so certain things that you find that you're eating might create additional symptoms that are not even gluten-related. And if that's the case, listen to your body and maybe lay off of those things for a time. Maybe it might not be forever, but for a time until your body kind of adjusts and adapts and becomes a little bit more resilient as your body is able to heal. I like that. Donna says, years of regular canker sores went away when I went grain-free, plus avoiding foods I was allergic to and avoiding other inflammatory foods, basically going on a personalized no grain, no pain lifestyle. Yeah, and then that's just it, right? A personalized diet, a diet to match who you are. Dave says, I have a lesion on my ileum. Any comments? Dave, it's hard to comment on something because what kind of lesion? Has it been biopsied? Did the doctor say anything else? Is it just a generic lesion? Best comment I can give you would be, again, following no grain, no pain as just a general diet until you get with a good doc who practices functionally, and they may be able to find out better how you need to change your diet uniquely to you. I spit up phlegm every day. Could this be related to GERD, which I have under control without meds? Yeah, it can be. It can also be related to other food allergens or other food problems. Phlegm, if you're spitting up a lot of phlegm, phlegm can be a sign of food allergy. It's one of those potentials. It can also be a sign that your mold exposure can lead to chronic phlegm production as well. So if you're in a moldy environment or potentially a moldy environment, that might be something that you want to look into. How does the one fight drug resistant? Okay, that was, I think I answered that question already, the drug resistant candida question. Yeah, that was one of the first ones that came in. Let's just keep scrolling down that. Let's see here. So that's a question. So Yale asks, if I suspect I have mold exposure, is a mycotoxin test good to help identify? Yes and no. You can't identify mold exposure solely on a mycotoxin test because there's mold and then there's mycotoxins. So if you have mycotoxins in your body and they're coming out in high quantities in your urine, it's a pretty good bet you might be getting mold exposure. But then the next question becomes from where? Because some people get mold exposure from their office space at work or from their home. Some people get it from their car. If you drive an older car and you smell must every time you turn on the AC, that's a potential. So it's not just about identifying for mycotoxins, it's also about identifying the location and the source of the mold. Because a lot of people try to do a mycotoxin detox, but they're still in a moldy environment, and that can actually make your symptoms worse. And so you got to be careful with that. Dawn asks, I have inflammation in the stomach. Meds haven't helped. What can I do? So the generic answer for any of you who are struggling with chronic inflammation, step one is if you haven't already, is to navigate the no grain, no pain diet. And get on that as quickly as you can. If you don't have a copy of the book, you can pick it up at Barnes & Noble or Amazon or any other major book retailer. If you're on a tight budget, you can pick it up at the library. You can check it out at the library, so it doesn't even cost you anything. But get the book and start with phase 1 and then work into phase 2 of the diet. That's a great place to begin the journey. Let's see. Let's keep going down here. Can parasites house gluten antibodies and be a reason why you can't lower your levels? No, parasites don't house gluten antibodies. That's not something that actually happens. Best material for cookware, Marie wants to know. I would recommend either like a cast iron with an enamel brand like La Creuset, which is a French company, or even like there's an American cast iron called Lodge, made in America, without all the other garbage. I don't recommend you buy any cast iron from China. You just don't know what kind of toxic metals are going to be pumped into that stuff. Additionally, like a stainless steel might be a good option for you as well. But those are both deemed really pretty safe. Do I recommend an elemental diet if somebody is really bad? Maybe, sometimes. And so there are some people that are so inflamed that an elemental diet is kind of a good place to begin the process where they can get some nourishment without taking in so many different foods if they're allergic to so many different things, where that nourishment can come in without the detriment. If you have diverticulosis, should you avoid nuts and seeds? It's not a bad idea, or if you're gonna eat certain nuts, it's better if you like make them into a paste like a nut butter. Again, where that becomes a problem is when you're chewing on a nut. You don't make it a complete paste in your mouth before you swallow it. You have little tiny debris, right? And it's that debris that can get lodged into a diverticulosis pouch. And so that's where if you're doing like a butter instead of the actual nut itself, you might be okay to still eat some of those things and not limit your diet so much. How do you get yeast under control, pro and prebiotics? Yeah, I mean, you can use both. My favorite high dose or strong probiotic is Ultrabiotic Defense. One of the reasons why is it's about 10 times the strength of most probiotics that you can buy over the counter, but it also comes with a prebiotic in it. So it has a prebiotic built in. So you're getting a prebiotic plus the probiotic, but you're getting it in a meaningful quantity. And a lot of times, like a probiotic, if the dose isn't there, if you're not taking in enough, one of the problems is like trying to spit out a forest fire. It's just not enough to really do much. So you really want to have, if you're struggling with you're trying to support your gut's healthy bacteria so that you're preventing a yeast overgrowth, especially after using an antibiotic, this is one that we recommend on a very frequent basis for that support. Okay. Melanie wants to know, should we just take a good multivitamin and mineral supplement rather than be tested for deficiencies? You can, but it's not, let's just say you're deficient in vitamin C. A multivitamin is not going to have the level of vitamin C that you might need to correct a vitamin C deficiency to any great degree. It might not have enough zinc or molybdenum or other micronutrient minerals in it. And so again, a multivitamin is a great place to start, but if you're struggling, now, if you're perfectly fine and healthy and you feel great, take the multivitamin. But if you're struggling, you're not doing quite so well, you want to get with your doc and have your micronutrient status evaluated. Let's see here. Thoughts on HBOT? Holly wants to know. Hyperbaric oxygen therapy, vagus nerve infection. Well, first of all, I don't know how anybody could tell you have a vagus nerve infection. That would be a challenge for that type of evaluation. So I might even question that aspect of it, although I'm not your doctor. I really can't. But as far as hyperbaric oxygen therapy is a great therapy, but I would question kind of what is leading the doctor to think you have a vagus nerve infection, because I don't know how they could diagnose a vagus nerve infection. And I just don't know what kind of laboratory objective measurement they would be using to make, oh, there it is. I didn't see this part 2 of the comment. Vagus nerve dysfunction. So then the question becomes, what's creating the vagus nerve dysfunction? For most people, it's a hypersympathetic life or hypersympathetic choices. So when you're reacting to the foods that you're eating, when you're in an environment that promotes heavy levels of stress, it turns up your sympathetic nervous tone and turns down your parasympathetic nervous tone. Oxygen is not necessarily by itself going to change that. You have to change the other lifestyle parameters and factors that got you into that sympathetic dominant state in the first place. Hyperbaric oxygen therapy and any other form of passive therapy. Look, passive therapies can be very effective and very helpful, but if you're not addressing the underlying root reason that the problem began in the first place, then passive therapies, you become dependent on them to feel good. And so, yes, you can use it, and there's nothing wrong with doing it, but you just make sure you talk with your doctor too about the underlying reason that issue is there, that sympathetic nervous system problem is there. Okay. So Willow says, what should I do to stop diverticulitis? I think more than anything, you've got to have somebody get with your doctor to evaluate your diet, your nutritional deficit, to get with your doctor to evaluate any kind of food sensitivity or food reactivity that you might be having that's creating that weakness, that's allowing that to occur. That would be probably the smartest thing to begin the process of doing. Otherwise, you just end up with a persistent problem that doesn't go away. What's the difference between candida and SIBO? Candida is a type of yeast, and SIBO is a generic term for small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. Yeast and bacteria are not the same thing. Yeast are a different type of life form. Yeast are a form of fungus, and SIBO it would be in reference to bacteria. So again, two different types of life forms. So that's kind of your main, definitional difference. As far as the difference between symptoms can be very similar, although I would tend to say that a lot of times where I see people that have been told they have SIBO don't actually have SIBO. What they really have is a bad diet, and they just haven't fixed their diet adequately enough. That's not to say the person can't have SIBO, though. Jamal wants to know, can itchy skin, vitamin D deficiency, and trouble breathing problems be an indication of gluten-induced issues? Absolutely, it can. Itchy skin, because gluten can actually lead to, there's actually, we did a whole show, Jamal, you might want to go back and look at my archive on gluten-induced skin problems. And we did another show on gluten-induced lung issues. And so if you have trouble breathing and skin problems, go back and watch those and you'll get more detail than what I have time to go into tonight. CJ wants to know if klebsiella in the intestines of a person with breast cancer can cause malnutrition, and how dangerous can it be long-term if not detected and dealt with early enough? It depends. So it's hard to say, because the presence of klebsiella in the intestines doesn't necessarily dictate an infection. There's infection and then there's imbalance, and there's a distinct difference between the two. And I would say if you know that you have klebsiella in your intestines, and talk with your doctor more specifically about what the plan is in relationship to that. Let's see, next question. Hard to answer that one. On Humira for colitis in remission for 2 months. My GI doc says no such thing as a leaky gut. You know, one of the leading researchers in the world at Harvard, Dr. Alessio Fasano, is really who began the process of understanding leaky gut. You should print out some of his research articles that talk about the term intestinal permeability, because if your GI doctor is telling you there's no such thing as leaky gut, to me, you want to run the other direction and find one who understands current science. I mean, leaky gut is no longer a fringe topic. It's been verified, it's been studied, it's been identified, it's been researched. It's not a what do they call it, a blue penguin or a purple penguin or whatever. It's a very real entity. GastroDoc recommended a line twice a day. This is all too much, or is this too much? That's not really a product that I would recommend. A line is not really I wouldn't call that, in my opinion anyway, a great probiotic to use. Thoughts on fulvic acid? Fulvic acid can be a good source of natural microtrace and ultra-trace mineral. You know, beyond that, if you can be more specific about what you'd like me to give thought about. Let's see, last question here. I suffer from headaches that seem gut-related. However, my gluten-free diet hasn't altered the head pain. Any help here? Joe Bird wants to know. So in that regard, the number one question I would say, if you're on a gluten-free diet, are you on a true gluten-free diet or are you on a traditional gluten-free diet? So that would be question number one. If you don't know the difference, again, get a copy of No Grain, No Pain and learn what that difference is. Number two, you could have some very serious nutritional deficit that are triggering your headaches or that are contributing to your headache. You could also have some other food reactivity that might be triggering your headache. I've got a really lengthy show that we did a couple months ago on headaches. And so I would also encourage you to go back and watch that show and just see whether or not there's some other things that we discussed within that might help get you an answer. Hey, can we post an LGS support link? It's called, Angeline, it's called Ultra LGS. If we could post that link.
It's higher up in the feed.
Yeah, okay. We'll get that in there for you. Okay, looks like we're out of time, folks. Thanks for spending Monday evening with me. Super excited to have you on board. As always, if you aren't already subscribed, make sure you hit that subscribe button and hit the reminder bell so that you'll get updates when we go live. Also, make sure you come visit me at glutenfreesociety.org. We've got a fantastic newsletter. It's the world's largest gluten-free newsletter. I'd encourage you to sign up. We'll send you right away. We'll send you a gluten-free starter kit to get going to navigating the gluten-free diet. So make sure you come sign up there as well. And don't forget, we'll be back next Monday, same time, 6 p.m. Central Standard Time for another episode of Big Dr. Osborne's Brain. Hope you have an excellent week. We'll see you next Monday night. Hey, if you've got a functional medicine or health question that you'd like me to answer for you, make sure you send me an email, glutenology@gmail.com, and we'll do our best to create a video answer just for you. Have a great day.